What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Reafi. We're back here, and as you read in the title, of course, we're back to the monster discussions. Now, before we start, I want to make one thing clear. These opinions, obviously they are opinions. If you do not agree with them, that is totally fine. You don't need to agree with them. A lot of these opinions, though, that I do make are pretty well accepted by a lot of players, and it just kind of happens as a community type of thing. One monster seems as bad. A lot of people will kind of agree with that just because it's so obvious. So we'll go ahead and start with the discussion of the Archangels. Of course, it was the #1 voted thing on the last video that we did with the Chimeras, I believe it was. Yes, it was voted quite a lot, but of course it was a huge tie for a very long time actually, and then they just started pouring in votes over the Archangel. So before we start, we're the next 3 monsters that you guys can choose from. I'm gonna again do 2 natural 4 stars and then a 5-star monster, and let's see what you guys decide. So that being said, we're going to do the Fairy King, okay, as the natural 5-star, which I feel like I have a lot of room to talk about since I do have the Wind one, and we could go more in depth since it is a new monster. And then we're going to be doing the Barbaric Kings, which I did actually get the light one, ironically enough. And then one of the other, I got a lot of emails about this one too, the Neostone Fighters. Alright, so this should be something interesting to do. Leave your comments down below, your votes, okay? Just the name, just say the name, don't abbreviate it, just say Neostone Fighter, or just say, Fairy Kings. That's it, alright? That way it's a lot easier for me to tally up the votes, because you gotta understand, I get a lot of votes, and I use the Google Finder to count how many there are. So don't spam it just one time. Fairy King, Neostone Fighter, or the Barbaric King. Alright guys, let's get into the Archangel monster discussion. So first one up is Vella Joule. Let's look at his unawakened version and see what his stat increases get. He does get increased critical rate by 15%. Now that is always nice. Get crit rate is actually a huge bonus. Out of all of the monsters, I would have to say the best bonus has to be the crit rate. And that's just because most of the monsters you're going to be using in the game tend to be damage dealers. You get a lot of, good support monsters, but there's not really any boost that you can get from that other than resistance that will really help you more. You already get stat increases in HP and in defense, attack and speed, all that kind of stuff, sometimes speed. And then you get resistance, sometimes the speed buff, okay, or the speed boost from Awakening. That is rare. Obviously that one is the #1 spot, but out of the most common ones, the crit rate probably has to be the most convenient one besides the speed. So having extra crit rate, very nice. It would have been nice if it was speed, but it's just really rare, okay? So looking at his stats, he's a support-based monster. He has 10,000, a little bit over 10,000 HP, 790 defense, which is quite nice for a max level 40 Vella Joule. This is easier to look at since we can see the actual stats that you'll get when you max him out, because it's hard to do that with 5-star monsters. The speed is quite low. That's the problem here with Vella Joule. His speed is so low that it's harder to get him up where he needs to be if you're going to be using anything other than Violent, or I should say Swift, because the base speed that you go off of doesn't really boost him as much. And if a lot of people are like, well, it's only like 5 or 10 speed compared to a lot of monsters, Violent doesn't really take percentage of your base stats. You also have to take into account any speed leaders. You have to take into account with the speed totem and stuff like that. Little tiny touches to that can affect your defense or in other parts of the game as well with the speed totem. So that's just something to keep in mind. It does actually affect from the base speed. So 95 base speed, meh, it's hard to work with, but it is manageable given that Vella Joule is the best immunity monster in the game. So for you folks that don't know what he is or what he does, if you're new to this game or something like that, he does grant immunity. So we'll start with the first skill. First skill attacks with a Heavenly Sword, removing a beneficial effect on the enemy with a 75% chance. Damage increases according to the defense. This is where a lot of people get confused. I would say a lot of people tend to ruin him as like a damage dealer, defense, crit damage, defense, and they don't really take into effect that his third skill is why he's so good. If you wanted like a defense-based damage dealer, you could go with like Copper or something like that. who at least brings AoE defense breaks, stuns, and then his third skill, which is ignoring defense. At least it ignores defense rather than doing damage based on the defense. And he does damage based on the defense, right? Okay, so a lot of people ruin him damage-wise. You have to be very careful with that, because if you ruin him damage-wise, you're lacking out on speed. And let's say you ruin him speed and damage-wise, now you're missing stats in your HP and your defense, and he's a lot easier to kill. He is a lot easier to kill. So his second skill deals damage with Flames of Punishment and inflicts continuous damage for 3 turns. The inflicted damage increases according to defense. So again, another defense-based attack. Honestly, the attacks are not bad at all. The first skill removes beneficial effects. I find that to be super useful, especially when you're bringing it on a fight where you can remove the attack break or the attack buff, right? So let's say it's on defense and there's some kind of monster that they're using, maybe they're using Akamamir or something like that. They can remove the attack buff, which can potentially actually ruin the entire attack. The second skill is not as much crazy, but if you're using him more as a tank and utility, he can actually deal some damage, and you just do it with damage over time, and then that way you can continuously lower down their attack if they're not bringing any healers, stuff like that. Okay, so what if they bring a healer? Well, that's why you got the third skill. Removes all harmful effects on all allies, granting them immunity for 3 turns and increasing the attack bar by 30%. So not only does this increase the attack bar, it cleanses, and it's immunity for 3 turns. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, 3 turns with a 6-turn cooldown, it's on and off like Delphoid, but no. It's actually, you get 2 cooldowns, right? And then it's 3 turns with a 4-turn cooldown, which means you're only going to have 1 turn, given that Vella Joule doesn't violent proc at all, without immunity. So, and he also cleanses, so let's say you take any debuffs with that during that time, you're gonna go ahead and cleanse it, essentially. Very, very useful. Now, I'm going a little bit super in depth with this, but I think Vella Joule is just incredible, okay? So, yeah, that's just, I love that skill. And then, of course, he gets increased HP of ally monsters with fire attribute by 50%. Don't run mono teams. They never work, honestly. It's good for, like, midweek when you're trolling and stuff, but mono teams, it's not worth it, in my opinion. They're just going to bring, like, water monsters and shit like that, and then you're screwed. You're not going to be able to do anything against that. Alright, guys. The next one is Arielle. Again, same problem. 95 base speed. Now, of course, the defense is a little bit lower, okay, which is understandable. I mean, it's barely anything, really. It's not that big of a deal. But the HP is higher, which is obviously a good thing. Now you can run Arielle with more HP, and the base HP is higher, which means any of your percent stats, main stats, substats, give whatever it is, it will be a higher HP. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Same first skill, recovers an ally's HP by 50%. 50% heal. Now, for a lot of people out there, they're like, oh, well, Chasun's best healer, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people don't take into account that the heal, for the rebalancing skill, I should say, is only as good as Chasun's, basically her HP at the current moment. So when she does it, or the monster she's doing it with, so when she does it, sure, it doesn't really take into account heal block or anything like that, but it is never going to be consistent. If Chasun's heal, or if Chasun's HP is maxed out, then of course it's going to be a full maxed, basically HP recovery type thing. But if her HP is low, everyone's HP is low, her third skill is not as incredible, right? So you have to be very careful with Chasun. The thing with Arielle is it's a consistent 50% HP heal. I believe it's a 4-turn cooldown. Actually, I don't know. It might go down to 3 turns if I'm not mistaken. That's, yeah, I think it does actually go to 3 turns. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a 3-turn heal, because I see that shit all the time being used. Alright. Last one is, the last skill is recovers HP values by 30% each, and additionally recovers 50% every turn for the next 3 turns. Okay. So here, it's basically a Bella Dion type heal with a little stat with, you know, like the buff with the cross on it that heals by 15% for the next 3 turns. Now, the thing with Arielle is, of course, he doesn't buff really with attack buff like Chasun does. Now, a lot of people were like, yeah, well, you shouldn't compare him with other monsters. Chasun is a very, very similar monster to Arielle. Very similar. Like, the heals are almost identical. Single target and AoE type stuff. The AoE buffs, essentially. Different buff, but yeah. So the thing with the two different monsters, I would say Arielle is actually better for PvE type stuff like Trial of Ascension. Hands down, because it's consistent healing. If you look at this one, 30%, I don't even know if it gets increased. I think it might be more than 30%. It could be like a 36% heal. And then the 15% every turn is consistent. So that's 45% plus whatever the 30% maxes out to because of, upgrades and stuff like that, like for the skill ups. Essentially, that's about an 80% heal, more or less, right? That's incredible, honestly, over the course of 3 turns. It's consistent and it's easier to keep your team alive. So if you have an Arielle, I would definitely rune him more. Convenient for like Trial of Ascension, maybe even Rift too. You put a shit ton of defense on him, run him in Rift, and bam, incredible. Okay, so then the HP of all ally monsters with the attribute by 50% is increased for his leader skill. Of course, that is always useful to run, and if you have Arena, he is an absolute terror in Arena. It's just super annoying when you have 50% HP boost. That's like 6,000 HP for Arena, 5 to 6,000 HP boost. Boom. Just like that. Nothing you can do about it. That's a leader skill, okay? So he also gets resistance by 25% on a support monster. So that is the other type of good boost. When you have support type monsters that you want to keep undebuffed, basically, you want resistance, okay? Speed would have been nice, but resistance works too. Alright. He's definitely a good monster. Next one is Eladreal. Okay, guys. I don't have him. It's understandable. But it's time to be realistic. Is Eladreal a good monster? And this is going to be something that a lot of players need to hear, okay? Eladreal is a good monster, but I feel like he gets overhyped a lot. A lot of people try to argue him as the best healer, or I should say the best reviver in the game, or because it's a full revive. But the thing is, he does hurt himself by losing half of his current HP to revive. Now, the problem with that is that, it opens himself up to be killed. If you're running some type of bruiser team, with Theomars and all that kind of stuff, yeah, I mean, it's actually easier to kill him. He revives a monster. You can actually abuse, I went over this, abusing the revive order. So the revive order goes in the order of the monsters as their lineup dictates. So the person with the leader skill, if like everyone dies but the last one on the lineup and he's a reviver, he's going to revive the leader skill first, then the next one in line, then the next one in line, just etc. like that. That is the AI. So it's actually pretty easy to abuse the revive order in order to open up Eladreal for basically half of his HP. And all you have to do is kill the nuker. He loses half of his HP, kill him, then kill the nuker again. That type of thing if you're bringing bruisers, okay? Now that being said, he does bring a 50% heal, which is actually quite awesome. Now the thing is, where would you use him? Again, 110 speed, amazing. 714 defense is manageable given the fact he has 12,000 HP. That is just glorious. So his stats are right like that. Boom. Awesome. His awakening skill, let's see. Whoop, come on. Attack speed by 15, like we saw. Okay. His leader skill, harder to use because, I mean, what kind of win team are you going to be running where you're going to be using 50% attribute? Other than like maybe Giant Speed 10, which you shouldn't be running Revive in Giant Speed 10 anyways. Now this is past beginner level, okay? Anytime we talk about natural 5-star, it's past beginner level. Any 5-star, most 5-stars, like 99% of them, are going to help people when they just start out the game, obviously, okay? But when you start getting further into the game, where would you use him? His skills are good, right? His Revive is manageable. You can work around it, given that you're not on defense. I wouldn't use him on arena defense. Where would you use him? Honestly, only place I can really think of is actually Guild Wars. And I've seen a lot of Guild War defenses with him, and that's because most of the revives that people run, they run it with they'll try to run Briand, who basically pulls from the HP pool of your monsters. There's only 3 monsters. If someone died, there's only 2 monsters. Well, now you're shit out of luck. That second skill, most Guild Wars don't last long enough. I can't speak English. long enough to make that second AoE attack break from Brian work. Now he brings extra heal. His revive is 100% no matter what, as long as you run him with good stats and someone to keep him alive with like Jasoon or even like Wadum, just to protect him once he uses this. You need someone to protect him when he does his revive. If you don't, you better hope he violent procs. You're going to need him on violent runs, and hope he violent procs. Now, Guild Wars is honestly the only place I can find a use for him. Some people use him in Rift. The only problem I find with that is there's 6 monsters, single target heal. You open him up for another attack to kill him, and you don't really do anything with the first skill. But that's just for Rift, okay? For Guild Wars, it's a different story. So on Guild Wars, I would actually rate him as actually a very, very highly used Guild War defense monster. And when you revive on offense, as long as you revive the monster before the match ends, you're good to go. That monster will be reusable, for those of you that don't know. So definitely really overhyped in chats, but not a bad monster. I'm in no means by saying he's a bad monster. He is quite good, actually, for Guild Wars. You know, you gotta be careful if you use him in defenses, because that's where it starts getting sketchy. You need to be working on those runes if you want to use him in arena defense, and you're going to need to make sure you run good, you know, offset, right? Nemesis, or I would say Nemesis or Will is mainly the biggest two. Some people run guard, some people run stuff like energy runes, stuff like that. I would go with Nemesis or Will, actually. One of those two, it's kind of like the top pick for a support-based monster on violent runes, but it's up for interpretation by a lot of you. Okay, now's the time we get into the big dogs, the very least seen Archangels, and that is Arielle and Fermion. Actually, recently my guildmate pulled Fermion. That's incredible. Okay, moving on. Arielle has to be one of the most underrated Archangels of them all. Everyone always says that the Light Archangel sucks. Now, of course, he's the poster guy of the CompTOS headquarters, everything. The entire corporation runs this guy as their logo. He's even on the commercials. But regardless of that, is he a good monster? 769 defense, 11.5k HP, and 95 speed. The speed is a problem, obviously. Yeah, fuck that speed, okay? But 11.5 HP, yeah, I mean, that's not bad. That's actually easy to work around. He's a support monster. Are all of these support monsters? No. Fermion is the only non-support Archangel. Okay, good to know. Arielle, okay, has good stats. Low speed, but good stats. Now let's look at his skills. Same 50% heal, which is always nice to have. And he counterattacks the attacker when you or your ally is attacked with a critical hit and increases the attack gauge by 15%. So this is where he gets misunderstood. Also, he gets resistance by 25%. You know, he's not really a support monster, honestly. I wouldn't like a healer or like any like that kind of stuff. He's not. Single target heal, no, it's never really a good sign of a support monster, okay? But his passive actually makes him quite good. When you counterattack, you can actually despair stun. Now the thing with this is he has built-in counterattacking, which is 100% chance when they crit on any of your monsters, on any of your allies. That is awesome. Now you're going to obviously want to run him on a team that does not reduce crit chance. Running Arielle with like Julianne or like, what was the other one? I think the other one, there was Chroma, Julianne, and Molly. Those three, I believe they reduce crit chances or they increase chances for glancing hit. One of those two for all three of those monsters. You don't want to run them with him if you do have those, because you want them to critical hit on you. You want to take a critical hit, then you can revenge. You can either do some damage on your revenge, you can stun with despair runes like Despair Nemesis, Despair Will, Despair Revenge. I would say Despair Revenge, honestly. And then of course, HP, light attribute, 50%. Boom, just like that. Now I can think out of all of these, this is basically the best leader skill because there's so many light trios that everyone runs. Darian, Bella Dion, I don't even remember the light golem, right? I don't remember his name, but the light golem. And there's many, many, many more that people love to run. If you have the light sylphid, you can actually run her. Mihail, right? Mihail, okay? you can actually run her with him. Very, very, very incredible leader skill out of all of them. Basically the best one. Now they're all 50% for their attribute type, but this is basically the one that is the most useful because there is use with those light trios and all that type of stuff. Okay. Now what can you really do with the passive? Basically defense. If you run him on something like Guild War or Arena, you can make it work. I believe Rengar actually made it work quite nicely with the Despair Artamiel. I don't know if he's still doing that on the European server, but it's worth a shot. I know actually one of my friends on my friend list, I believe her name's I can't pronounce Mission, okay? But she does actually have Artamiel, quite good Artamiel actually. I faced it in an arena defense and it's actually pretty good and it Despair stuns a ton. So all of you people out there that are always like, ooh, Artamiel is the worst Archangel. No. Shut your mouth. Definitely not. Very underrated. Okay. Before this video gets too long, Fermi, HP 10,215. Defense is the highest out of all 5 of the Archangels with 878 defense, 95 base speed. Okay, yeah, alright. That's okay, but increased critical rate by 15%. Alright, I'm already liking him. A lot of people say he's the worst Archangel, but is he? Is he really? Attacks with the Heavenly Sword removing a beneficial effect on the enemy with a 75%. Okay, same first skill, increases according to damage. Same second skill as Vella Joule, increases according to defense. Sorry, increases according to damage. No, defense. Increases according to defense. And then increases according to defense. Both of these two skills increases according to defense. Third skill, passive. Another passive skill from the Archangels. The inflicted damage decreases as the number of surviving allies increases, and the inflicted damage increases as more allies die. Okay, so this is one of those skills where you basically need your team to die off before you can do damage with him. That's kind of like Gorgo. I believe his name is Gorgo, the Dark Lich. I believe that's actually a very similar type of skill. Now the only thing is his damage decreases as the number of surviving allies increases. So his damage will go down if you revive. So it's kind of like even if you lose a monster but revive him, damage goes back to normal, essentially. Okay? So hard to work with. I've seen damages of Fermion. Obviously you'd have to go with like a defense-based damager, like defense, crit damage, defense type thing with speed subs, attack subs, because it still bases off of attack. You would need high crit rate, which helps with the obviously the increased critical rate for the boost. But leader skill is kind of wasted. There's no dark healers or anything like that, so it'd be hard to sustain a team of dark monsters, and the only ones that I can really think of are like Basalt and Veramos type dark monsters that anyone uses, other than, you know, natural 4 stars and other natural 5 stars. So on top of that, it's single target. It's hard to work with. You need your you need your teammates to die, or your allied monsters to die, for you to do damage. So to me, he's more of a trophy monster. I know he does actually do some nice damage. It's hard to work around and it's hard to set up, but you can actually do it. But with the other 4 being as good as they are, with in no particular order fire, water, wind, and light, the dark one kind of is outshined in a way, and it's a little bit sad because he's not a bad monster. He's not a bad natural 5 star. He's just outclassed by his other Archangels, his fellow attribute type stuff, right? Everything kind of outshines him at this kind of stage. So it's hard to look at him in a light other than he's kind of useless right now, but he can be fun to play with, and with his skills, it doesn't make him utterly useless. So definitely, I would want to see him changed with his passive skill. It probably won't happen. Rarely, very rarely, are light and dark attribute type natural 5 stars changed, and that's just because no one has them. Like, no one has enough of them to complain for them to get buffed or nerfed or any of that type of thing, you know? You don't see any of that kind of stuff with the light and dark monsters. So obviously, with the least useful Archangel being the dark one, which one is the best one? Which one is the best one? And I'm gonna have to go with my boy Vella Joule. Yep, the fire one has to be, in my opinion, even though he derps a lot with his AI, 3 turn immunity does not exist in the game other than Vella Joule. It is the only monster to grant 3 turn immunity and cleanse, and of course remove beneficial effects with the first skill. And the leader skill is actually useful too. Base stats are nice. What's not to like about him, right? Alright guys, that is my take on the Archangels. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think. What is your favorite Archangel and why? Okay, make sure you tell me why. Also, we're going to be doing a new type of series. It's kind of like on the verge of I'm doing it and not doing it. I want to do a series called Overrated and Overused, just because too many people just can't take basically advice or opinions seriously. I want to discuss stuff like Chloe defenses, how they're so overused and type of things like that, where we actually break it down. Now, of course, we're not going to like bash on the monsters or anything like that, but we're definitely going to like break down why they're so overused and why, like what kind of workarounds you could do to actually improve your defenses or offenses without these types of monsters. So let me know what you guys think if you guys want to see that. Stay tuned. We're doing a double account giveaway. We're going to be doing 2 accounts. We'll give it away to 2 winners, and I will be basically announcing that in the next video. Alright guys, I'm excited to see what you guys say in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. Stay tuned.